In this video, we're going to show you how to install the strut assembly on your Kia Sorento located behind your front wheels. Using a 21mm socket, go ahead and loosen and remove your lug nuts. Go ahead and grab that wheel, remove it, and set it aside. Using a 17mm deep socket, we're going to loosen and remove the nut on our sway bar end link. With that loose, I'm going to go ahead and put the nut back on it and just tuck that back. Locate your ABS speed sensor on the forward part of the strut. You want to go ahead and pull this out. You don't want to pull on the wire. You want to go ahead and gently work this out on the bottom and top, rolling it out from the bracket. Using a 10mm socket, loosen and remove this bolt holding the ABS wire to the body. Remove the bolt. I'm going to go ahead and thread that back into the body. Want to loosen and remove the two strut nuts here. We're using a 19mm socket. On the bolt side, it's a 17mm. I'm going to use my box end wrench to hold that. We did spray these down with some rust penetrant. And for any reason, if you cannot get these nuts loose, you probably have to grab a breaker bar to go ahead and break that free. Let's go ahead and do so. Once you get that broken free, go ahead and do the same for the lower. Now that we have them both broken free, let's go ahead and put our impact gun back on there and remove those nuts. I'm going to work this back and forth to help clean up those threads. Let's do the same for the bottom. Now we want to go ahead and remove these bolts here. The end of our bolt here is tapered, and we're going to go ahead and tap this with a hammer. Now you want to be careful not to hit the threads on this here, because if you mess these bolts up, you're going to have to tap them again or clean them up. But we're going to gently tap this and see if we can get these bolts to come free. Now we're striking the knuckle here because our bolts are stuck in here. They're clearly rusted in place, so we want to go ahead and break some of that rust free. We may have to apply some heat to this here to loosen this up. Now at this point, our bolts are clearly rusted in place here. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a socket on our bolt side and see if we can get these bolts to spin in place. Now our bolt is starting to come out here. I'm going to go ahead and spray some rust penetrant in here. I'm going to work this back and forth. Do the same for the bottom. Now we try to get our socket on the back here, but our brake flex hose was in the way. No matter what we tried, whether it was an impact tool or whatever, you can get a wrench in there, but you just can't get enough leverage on this to move this back and forth and break that free as we need to. So what are we going to do now? Come on over to our brake caliper, and we're going to go ahead and loosen and remove this upper bolt. Now it's a 14mm. I'm going to go ahead and remove this. What we should be able to do is pivot this back out of the way. You let that drop down. Just kind of set there. Now we can go ahead and get our impact gun on here. Okay, that still doesn't want to move even with our impact gun. So we are going to go ahead and get our breaker bar. We'll have to break that free that way there. Well, you can see our knuckle and our strut separated there. If you want to, go ahead and pop that bolt back in here. That should hold that in place while we work on this the rest of the way. Now these bolts are not threaded through the knuckle. This is smooth going through, and then just the threaded portion comes out the other end. So what we're trying to do is break that rust free. That's the sound of being stuck, my friends. Oh. Let's see if our impact gun will make lighter work of this. Now you can see I'm working this back and forth, even though it's not threaded. We're just trying to crumble up that rust in there. Don't forget to periodically spray that with some rust penetrant. See if we can get that working in there. Now that we have that bolt free, what we're going to do is we're going to put a brass punch on the other side to knock this bolt out. Should really get that far enough in to work that out. Now previously we removed the upper bolt. Now let's go ahead and do the same for the lower. Let's go ahead and slide our caliper off. Now I want to go ahead and hang this. So I'm going to use a hanging tool here that is designed for calipers. I'm going to set that up and put that off to the side. If you want, you can go ahead and remove your brake pads. Set those aside. Remember that the inboard pad has your squeak tab on it for installation purposes. Set those aside. Now at this point, we now can go ahead and remove the upper bolt on our strut assembly. Support that knuckle with your arm. Pull that bolt out. I'm going to go ahead and grab my securing strap. You're just going to find the way that you find best to do this. I'm coming around, going into the vents on my brake rotor, between some studs here to kind of support it, and just gently work this out and push your strut inward. Now you can see that our knuckle is supported here. It's not going to fall out. Our strut is now separated down below. Let's now go up top and remove the 3 nuts, securing that. Now with the hood open, you're going to go ahead and locate the strut tower right here, and there's going to be 3 14mm nuts on here. Now I'm just going to use a regular ratchet with my 14mm socket. I'm going to break those free. Now this back one here is a little tough to get to because it's up underneath the cowl here. So if you can, loosen and remove that. I'm going to zip that up by hand. You might have to just use your ratchet depending on how rusty or corroded it might be. Now I'm going to switch over to my impact driver here. Now, as we loosen and remove these here, the strut is going to want to drop down into the wheel well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this one here. I'm going to leave the one that's closest to me, readily accessible. Now I'm going to use one hand to undo this, and then I'm going to use the other hand to go inside the wheel well and support that strut. Okay, just let that rest gently. Remove that nut up top. Now we can go into that wheel well, grab this here. I want to slide that out and remove it. Now, things you're going to need to do this here, you need something to properly and safely compress the coil spring. Next is a crayon or something to go ahead and mark. And you're going to need a 19mm deep socket to go ahead and remove our nut here. Let's go ahead and start. I'm going to use my crayon, and on this upper tray right here on the bearing plate, there is a little arrow right here. I'm going to go ahead and just put some crayon on that and kind of mark this. And what we need to do is, what this is marking is that these 2 studs face outward. This is going to be on the outward portion of the vehicle or the wheel well. And then I'm just going to put a little mark here on the spring. Now the spring is going to lock in to the base plate itself. The base plate has a spot for what we call the pigtail of the spring. It's a stopping point of where the coil spring will butt up against. The other thing we're paying attention to is the alignment here. Where this arrow is here, it lines up straight with where the bottom portion of the strut will go onto our knuckle. This is key for the assembly as well as the installation of our component. With that marked, I'm going to go ahead and just drop my 19mm socket there, and I need to go ahead and compress the spring. Let's go ahead and do so. What I'm checking for to see if I have any wiggle play here where that spring has released its tension. You can see that that is floating now, so our spring is safely compressed. Standing away from the spring, make sure that if you're using a tool like this here, you do not want to be where that spring can come out. So just think safety. Our strut now should come out. There it is. Drop that out from the bottom. On the bottom of the spring, you'll probably have a rubber or plastic insulated. You want to make sure that that is in good condition. We now want to go ahead and remove our piston hook here and push down on that. Remove that hook. I'm going to remove the nut on the top. I'm going to go ahead and remove our dust boot off of our old strut. and just swap that over. And you want to go ahead and take that piston and you want to go ahead and compress that. Now the first 5 or 6 times that you do it, the piston shaft itself is going to probably feel a little loosey in there. It's going to kind of like bounce around a little bit. But what we have to do is we have to get that fluid through the cylinder itself and get everything pre-charged. If you just throw it into the vehicle as is, it's still going to work, but the first 5 or 6 times you might hear some clunking from this actually building up the fluid and moving it where it needs to move it. By doing this, it's going to get that fluid up and through and pre-charging it. Now let's go ahead and raise this unit up into our spring. I'm just going to get that nut started on there. Now the nut on the new strut assembly is a 17 millimeter, not a 19 like the factory component. Let's put our impact gun on this. Now that we just have our nut threaded down several threads, we're now going to go ahead and line everything up. We're going to line this bearing plate up with the mark on the spring, and then as we start to release this, we're going to make sure that we can rotate the strut base to make sure that the pigtail of our spring, which is the tail end of our spring, fits into the notch. There's a notch on the spring base. Make sure that your spring insulator is correctly positioned. All right, we're gonna release this. No, I'm not gonna release it all the way yet. I am gonna go ahead and tighten down our nut on the top here. Now I wanna torque this center nut to 51 foot-pounds. I'm just using a pry bar and I'm gonna put it on the upper bearing cap and the stud itself. Okay, so that's torqued. Let's go ahead and remove the strut assembly from the compressor tool. Now we're going to take our strut assembly and we need to feed that up inside. All right, now that we have that in place, we need to hold it. One hand, hold it up inside. On the top, go ahead and get a nut started. Once you get one started, you can release holding the strut from underneath, or you can just kind of support it if you want. But go ahead and get the other nuts started on the studs here. I'm going to use my driver here to just go ahead and snug these. On the back side, I'm just going to use my regular ratchet. And just gently snug it. Let's move back to the wheel well. Now at this point here, we want to go ahead and get our knuckle installed into our strut itself. Now our strut is off just a little bit. It's not critical. It's good that we're at least close. Go ahead and grab a screwdriver and go ahead and put it in here, and you want to go ahead and rotate that just a little bit. Sometimes you don't even need the screwdriver, but it does help with leverage. Go ahead and bring that knuckle around, get this lined up. Now we went ahead and ran our bolts through our wire wheel machine, which is gonna be key because, well, we know that these were all rusted up inside here. I'm gonna go ahead and put some anti-seize compound on this, as well as the threads. I'm gonna go ahead and lift up on our assembly here. And it doesn't matter if you get the upper one or the lower one installed. We're just gonna go ahead and pop that through. Let's go ahead and do the same for the lower. Go ahead and get those nuts started. Now at this point here, we'll go ahead and snug these down. Install your ABS wire in the bracket. Just going to go ahead and snug that down. Now we removed our nut here off of our sway bar end link and we put some anti-seize compound on those threads there. Let's go ahead and get this on here and we'll snug that down. With our strut secured, we can now remove our securing strap. Set that aside. We're going to install our brake pads next. Grab your caliper, line this up, and get that upper bolt started. Once you get that upper bolt started, a few threads, you can go ahead and let go. That bolt will hold it, and then go ahead and get that lower one lined up. And then you just gotta slide that caliper up a little bit, get that lined up. Do the same here, get that started. Now I like to run them in as far as I can by hand. And we'll go ahead and pop our ratchet on there. Then we'll snug them down. We want to torque our 2 strut bolts to 80 foot-pounds. Torque down your sway bar end link nut here to 44 foot-pounds. Torque down your 2 caliper to bracket bolts to 20 foot-pounds. Good, and grab that wheel, line it up onto those wheel studs. Let's go ahead and get our lug nut started. Now once we get all of these started, we're going to come back and snug them all down. Let's go ahead and torque down our lug nuts to 75 foot-pounds. You want to do this in a crisscross pattern. Let's torque down our upper strut to 43 foot-pounds. Now if the rubber boot had popped off on your strut assembly, simply just line that up, pop that back on. Now this process for the passenger side strut is going to be the same for the driver's side. After finishing this installation, it's important to have an alignment done on your vehicle.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.